Welcome to the Touching into Presence podcast.
This podcast is for people who are interested in bodywork, empowerment, and somatic-based practices.
I am Nikki Olson.
I'm Andrew Rosenstock.
We are certified Rolfers.
Collectively, we're trained in various movement and bodywork therapies with an emphasis on somatic awareness and client resilience.
Through conversations, our goal is to share and explore mind-body paradigms to offer empowerment possibilities.
Such a pleasure to be in conversation today with Ally Gonzalez. Ally was born and raised in Colombia until the age of 9. In the early 2000s, she sought out political asylum in Canada with her family. She has an undergraduate degree in kinesiology and human kinetics, and she furthered her studies at the Guild for Structural Integration. Ally graduated as a structural integration practitioner in 2018 and has been in practice since. She lives, trains, and holds her practice in Bogota, Colombia, serving her local community. Ally's continual education focuses on understanding movement through the experiential lens of renowned structural integration practitioners such as Mary Bond and Judith Aston, the marriage of connective tissue through the speckles of Gil Hedley, and the metaphysical explorations of herself in elite athletics. One of Ally's ultimate life goals is to attend the Olympic Games and to be an ambassador of the SI community as she gains recognition on track. This year, she's training hard in hopes of qualifying for the World Championships that will take place in Oregon, USA, in the month of July. Making this World Championship team is a stepping stone for Ally to achieve her ultimate goal of making the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. In today's conversation, we spoke about the backstory of what brought Ally to track and field and then to SI, looking at SI with psychology, being a professional athlete, and how SI has kept her healthy in this field, being a young practitioner in the field of many older practitioners, and so much more. So with that, let's begin our talk.
Hello. Hi.
I'm really excited to hear about your journey. Also loved it, like I said in the email. I'm not sure what the Rolfing population or how that looks because you're in Colombia, correct?
Yes, I am.
So would love to hear about that. And too, I'm trying to become a runner. I'm a very slow runner.
Yes, tips.
But, no, but I think it's just you're just exciting in all different ways of, where you're from and your passion with running, your interests and where you want to go with that. I think it's all very unique, and excited that we could be part of this platform to maybe help spread the word a little bit and raise more money. I gave a little donation to your GoFundMe, but I think once we get this conversation live, I can't imagine why you wouldn't get more support.
Thank you.
Something really interesting with that is, there's a fair amount of SI people who are doctors and who are, psychiatrists and who are professional, and a lot work with athletes, but I don't know of many professional athletes who are SI people, and you are. So that's kind of nice to actually be in the door as opposed to observing the door.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Ally, can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you learned about Rolfing or Rolfing structural integration, and your career as a runner?
Okay.
I know there's a lot to unpack there, but let's go for it.
So, who am I? Well, as I briefly mentioned before, I was born here in Colombia in South America. At the age of 10, my family and I, we moved to Canada as a result of the political climate and death threats that my family received. And that really opened up a door of opportunities for me in the sense that I don't know if I would be an SI practitioner if I didn't have the opportunity to migrate to a different country. And so as a result of moving to Canada, I got involved in so many different sports. I continue playing tennis as I already had here, but the cost of tennis was extremely expensive in Canada. So my parents just decided to kind of put me in one of the cheapest sports, which was basketball at the time. I played basketball from grade 6 all the way to grade 11, and kind of like in the frustration of the sport itself, coming really close to making the Youth Olympics or making national teams, and not really feeling fulfilled with the amount of effort I was putting in the team atmosphere. I kind of took a step back and decided to kind of dive into track and field as a result of my dad kind of suggesting, oh, maybe you should just try track and field or try a different sport. Maybe that will kind of freshen up your perspective on basketball. And I really took that advice from my dad to heart, because he used to be a light heavyweight boxing champion way back in early 2000s, late 90s. And so he used to practice track and field. So I said, oh, well, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe I can improve some of my basketball skills, kind of take my head out of the team atmosphere and then just try something different. And it turned out that, like, prior to actually trying out for the track and field team in my high school, I had been watching the 2012 Olympics. I was watching the 2008 Olympics, and I saw out of the blue these runners going over these hurdles, and it was a 100-meter hurdle. So it was like super exciting. So I knew right away when I tried out for my high school track and field team that I wanted to do hurdles. And so I tried out. I was quite good, being kind of novice, and I made the team. So I started running hurdles, and then they put me in like some longer distances, like the 200 and the 400, and it turned out I was really good at the 400. So since there's an event that's the 400-meter hurdles, I started off running 400-meter hurdles for my school, and I had really good success in 2-3 months of training in comparison to other club kids who were running for their high school, but they had already been like 4 or 5 years in the sport. So feeling that I was accomplished and successful right from the beginning was kind of like the doorway into track and field. But I think the reason I decided to stay was because I really liked the challenge that it brought. It was a different type of challenge. So you can be a winner, you could be a quote unquote a loser, but you're still getting a learning opportunity out of every race. So I think that's still my motivation for today. And that's how I got into track and field. But really what really pulled me into SI was the fact that when I started getting more serious into track and field, I started getting some really serious injuries. And I would go to different practitioners, and like chiropractors, massage therapists. I tried Chinese traditional medicine, so many different modalities to kind of help the physical body be ready or less prone to injury. But the injuries were just so debilitating that in several instances, I remember being kind of like in the pool of depression and even considering moving away from sport. And just as I was getting ready to move away from track and field, SI came into my life when one of my coaches, my weightlifting coach, he suggested that I look into structural integration, that it was this modality where they put everything back into place and it would help athletes with their injuries and improve movement. And just when he said improve injuries, I was like, I am all in. So literally within a year after, because I spent a whole year researching SI before I became convinced, because it's not like modalities like chiropractics or massage that people already know because they're mainstream. So it really took me about 5-6 months to really make the decision to go and get my first 10 series. And
Ally, can you share what were some of those possible highlights. And I mean, a year research, considering that you're, dealing with your pain, possibly quitting. I applaud you taking time and be like, okay, what is this modality that not a lot of people know about, and taking your time to research. So I think that's pretty fascinating. So what were the key things that were like, okay, I'm going to give this a go?
So some of those highlights, from the get-go, when I did my research, it seemed like it was really mysterious. And so that's the thing that really kept me like researching for like 6 months, because let's say I came across like 5 or 6 like really good articles. I can't recall what the articles were, but came across some really good articles. Some of them were scholarly, and some of them were just regular newspaper articles on the web. But I really liked the fact that they touched on, I really felt in myself that I needed something holistically, because every time I would go to other types of practitioners, they would just treat the area where I was feeling injured. But I knew within myself that I needed something that would take a whole body approach. So aside from being kind of mysterious, like this thing will transform your body, it was like, we are going to touch the whole person. We're going to touch the whole being. And at the time, like I didn't really have this really deep concept of like self or body awareness, but the fact that they also mentioned opening up the awareness of the body to improve movement, or open up the awareness of the body to improve your relationships with other people was a really big factor that pulled me in. And curiously, after doing the 6 months of research, I was like, okay, I'm going to go. Like, I have nothing to lose. In the worst case scenario, then I spend this much money, and it didn't work because I already spent a whole bunch of money in other modalities. So I ended up like looking up in the city where I was living at the time, in Canada, which is London, Ontario. And there was only one practitioner, or there was like 2 practitioners, but I emailed them both. I didn't hear back from any of them for a while. And then 2-3 weeks later, after I had emailed one of the 2, I received an email saying that they were ready to take me on. I was like, oh my God. I was like jumping off the walls, because I knew this was a big deal for me to try something completely different that was out of the books in terms of rehabbing my body. So to my surprise, this practitioner who's still based out of London, Ontario, he's been working out of London for over 25 years. And he actually started off as a massage therapist, but then got pulled into the work 2-3 years after he had become a massage therapist. He really touched me from a place of love and touched me from a place of empathy. And this was really different from anything else I had received before, because I think that's before you can just help somebody recover from injury, you have to kind of put yourself in a position of understanding of where they're coming from, how they're struggling with pain or anything that's affecting the whole body. And I would say probably after the 5th or 6th session, my body started to open up in such a way that I was like a really loud person. Like, structural integration is the most amazing thing ever. Like, I would tell everybody, people would look at me like I was crazy, but I knew within myself that I was experiencing transformation, not only at the physical level, not only were my injuries kind of going away, because I know it takes time. But I just felt like I was in a new body, even though I had not even finished the series. So that's when I took the determination that I wanted to study structural integration. And I had 1 year left of studying my kinesiology degree at university. So I knew that was like the doorway into structural integration, especially because when I was in university, I really enjoyed classes on physiology. I enjoyed classes on psychology. I loved the anatomy courses. I took as many as I could. And And I just knew right away that that's the thing I wanted to do, because I was definitely in a search of like, what's next after my undergrad. And SI came at such a perfect time that not only did it heal me or help me heal, but it really gave me an inspiration. And that's the thing that I wanted to give people once I finished my training, a sense of purpose or a sense of inspiration, and also a hope, because I think this work gives people hope. So that's how I got into it.
Can you speak a little bit more, if you're comfortable with that, to sharing a little bit more of the transformational process? Because as you were speaking, I had a sense that what you might have discovered in your series was more than just understanding structural imbalances or pain resolution per se.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people come into this work hoping that their aches and pains will go away, and a lot of times that happens. But one thing that it's not until you go through the experience and how aware of what's going on that you realize that there's more to the work than just the physical changes of posture or maybe even a sense of like well-being. For me, it was like right away, within a few sessions, I started feeling more comfortable, not only in my body, but I think the somatic work really helped me mature as a person. I think that prior to going into getting my first 10 series, there is this sense of myself of wanting to escape my body, but it was not just a physical sense of escaping, but it was like feeling really uncomfortable with perhaps like the spirit or like the purpose of why I'm here. And I think the work really helped me bring together or balance out that sense of wanting to escape this body, and also the sense of finding home in my body, because I really did feel spaced out for so many years. I don't know if it was a form of protection or a form of just escapism, but I always felt like I was somehow elevated, and really had a hard time being present. And I think that's the biggest thing that the work gave me, aside from helping me recover from injuries. It allowed me to be here now, and present in my body. And in that sense, I think that was the biggest maturity that I acquired from the work. And that was really mind-blowing, because if you have the sense of escapism or wanting to go, it's hard to really pay attention to your surroundings, because you're so in your head or so out there.
Ally, if I can ask, and if this is too personal, you not only do you not have to share it, but I'll cut this beginning part out. But just sort of curious, as you're saying that, like, do you think you were aware of the escapism at the time, or is it that as you became more aware through the SI, that retrospectively you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I was, escaping or wanting to escape?
I think that I was aware. And I think that's why intuitively it felt right for me to go and get a 10 series, because I needed something to bring me back into my body. And even though I didn't know what structural integration was all about until I got my first 10 series, I had a sense that perhaps this was the thing that could help me come back. Yeah.
Cool.
And again, I feel like this might be personal, so but it's a question that I think is pretty relevant to what's going on right now, is with Ukraine. Like, at a young age, you had to escape your homeland and what your birthplace, and not from what you shared in the beginning, from death threats. That would definitely, I think, would propel a somatic journey of like escapism. It's out of survival. Do you does you feel like any of that has influenced possibly the escapism that you are experiencing or aware of in your body?
I think possibly. I think that with all the life changes from like the age of like even 5, I remember I'm currently in the process of trying to remember my life from the age of 5 to maybe 1 year old. But I feel like there's just, I don't know if it was a combination of just traumatic events or things that just kind of happened in my life that built up the escapism. So at the age of 10, like leaving Colombia it almost opened up the door for a new start. But I think with the new start, there was also baggage that I was carrying, perhaps from years before. So I think in combination with this new start, this new baggage, injuries, and not being able to like fully release these things, because perhaps parents, they say, oh, well, we're moving to a different country. You're going to go to a new school. You're going to interact with new kids. You're going to learn a new language. This is a lot for kids, even as it is for adults. But I also think that perhaps culturally, some parents don't believe that kids need psychologists, or kids need to find a way of processing some of their emotions or processing these changes. And I never had that. So now in my later years, now that I can somehow afford to get some other therapists, aside from getting SI work myself and giving SI work, I work with other therapists that help process traumas or help process life changes. And I think that's also really important as kids. And so I don't recall having any of that. And so having all of these things kind of pile up, I think I was just storing in my body and didn't have the opportunity to release. And I think that's also one of the major reasons why I had a lot of nagging injuries that followed me for 6-7 years. And I thought that I would come back out of one and then I would fall back into another one. So it was just kind of like a vicious cycle. And when I was able to break that, it was through SI work. I think that was the beginning of breaking that vicious cycle of just a lot of accumulated things.
Yeah, I really, wording is never my strong suit, so it's a good thing I co-host. I really enjoy, but it's not that I enjoy because it's it's difficult stuff you're talking about, but hearing it and hearing where you are, where you've come from, actually fills me with such happiness to see and to hear like the progress, the space we are now, and the mentioning of having a therapist, and and also like this is something that in my training we sort of talked about, but it's when I started going to therapy, my SI work became so much better. Yeah, and it's like, and I've actually, I feel that there's this really, a lot of SI people, we think we can do everything, and we kind of forget scope of practice. We're like, whatever. I understand that, but having like that partnership of the body work, or the SI work, or the somatic worker, and the therapist, I find to be such a rich area, and then when you can find people to work with and refer with, it's pretty awesome. And so I'm happy to hear that that's also.
It's definitely, I think we can pull from different places or help people heal and be pain-free and come back into their bodies, or have lightness in their mind through our work. But I think there's also benefit in complementing it with other things, finding a balance. And I think that's what I have been discovering later on as I've become a practitioner, and also as a person who went through the work. One of the biggest things for me also has been through sport. You also need psychologists. I've had a couple of sports psychologists, and I've found that with the complement of SI, it has really helped propel my sporting career, in the sense that you're not just dealing with the physical body, but you're balancing out your thoughts. And I think that, like, we can't disconnect the mind from the body. So I think that's been such a rich balance for me. Even though I'm a big advocate of structural integration, and I also believe that there's modalities that work, but for me, this one's the best.
So, like, going a bit back to the story, you went through your 10 series, and it was pretty transformative. What is it like? When and where and how do you become, when you decide to? I'm very curious, when you decide to go to which school do you decide to go to? How that sort of process all unwinds?
Okay, so as I briefly mentioned, I had 1 year left of university. I was doing my undergrad degree in kinesiology, and I was trying to determine if I was going to become a physio or if I was going to become a chiropractor. And SI just came into my life a year prior to graduation, and I knew right away once I finished my 10 series that that's what I wanted to do. So I actually got kind of mentored by my home rolfer to where to go to school, because he had already been so many years in practice. I really appreciated all his insights, and so he told me to look into Aston College, which was where David Davis was working out of Boulder, if I'm not wrong. And so I looked into Crestone, and I saw that their website was up. Things seemed like they were functioning, but then I got in contact with David Davis, and he was very honest and said that they were having some administrative issues, so that they were temporarily closing the school down, so they couldn't host me. And my home rolfer really suggested that I would go and train with David Davis. So I was bummed that I couldn't have this opportunity to train with him. And his next best option was to go to the Guild. He said, go to the Guild. I went to the Guild. When I went to the Guild, David Davis is there. So I only suggested Crestone because he's the one who started that school. But since he's not there, I do recommend that you go to the Guild, because they teach the work from the most organic place, or from the very grassroots beginning. So I got in contact with the Guild in Salt Lake City, and it seemed like the times of study, the application and everything was going to work for me, because I also looked into KMI. I looked into anatomy trains, but the timing of their classes didn't quite work for me in terms of like my schedule and my money. And so I ended up putting in my application for the Guild, and it was probably, I don't know what schooling would have been like for me if I went to anatomy trains, but the schooling that I got with the Guild was amazing. And if I could, I would do it all over again.
Well, you can. A lot of people do the trainings 2 or 3 times, so you're always welcome to do it over again.
I'm actually thinking about doing advanced training. I'm kind of just waiting for the Guild or maybe even the Rolf Institute to open up their advanced training. I haven't really looked into it into detail, but
yeah, in the last few years, there's been more shifts towards, which is really nice, to people cross SI training. So I've met a few people who were, Guild undergrad basic, right, and then do their advanced either in Europe or the US, or I think Brazil is tougher right now, but Europe and US for the Institute. And similar for like the European Guild has been having people come who are non-Guilders to do training. And it's really, I think for our side, it's really lovely to see that aspect. of again coming back together in some way instead of being like, we are this, you cannot join this, this is our club, you go over there. So it's nice. I think there's pros and cons with everything, but I think there's a nice benefit of getting to see a little bit more on the other side. So something to think about.
I think that was really Ida Rolf's vision to have different practitioners come together and spread the work, not really create boundaries or division of how far or how deep we can go into this work. So it's also really, for me, it's also really exciting that they're creating so many trainings in so many different places, and they're allowing practitioners from different schools to join, which I think education shouldn't have any limits. I think you can learn from anybody, anything. So for myself, I'm looking forward to perhaps next year diving deep into perhaps some advanced training and taking more courses if financially I can do it, because being here in Colombia, it's not, the work doesn't really doesn't allow me to do much more than sustain myself at the basic level. So being here really allows me to work from a place of love and not really work from a place of just monetary gain, although that's really important. But I really, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to come back to Colombia is because after being in Canada for so many years, I wanted to reconnect with my culture. And another reason why I came back is because my coach, who I've been working with for the past 5-6 years, he's here. And also, it's really important for me to give back to my community, especially because there's only 2 of us here, myself and another colleague who trained with the Rolf Institute, and he's out in Medellin, which is, it's like about an hour, 30-minute plane ride. But for the 2 of us to just be here and offer the work and kind of start from zero, because there's no awareness or there's no knowledge of the work here unless you work with certain people and they spread the word for you. There's no real knowledge of what SI is here. So it's been really gratifying in such a way that it's humbling to start from zero, but it's also hard work to bring awareness into a community where there's like virtually no knowledge of structural integration.
So with that being said, I want to touch in on that a little bit, because maybe it's just my own facade or ideas of South America, but with you having experience of being like born and raised in South America, having experience in Canada, sounds like you spent some time in the States with the Rolfing training. Mm-hmm. I did my final phase in Brazil, so I like have that comparison of just like people, south of the equator a little bit have a little bit more. They move in their body a bit better. They're not like a robot. And I mean, is that my own just kind of biased point of view, or do you get to kind of experience people moving in a more of a fluid way, I guess? Maybe it's not necessarily always efficient, but just providing, I mean, when I work a lot of times, and again, this is more of a gender thing, but like teaching contralateral movement to some men and like having them explore their pelvis, move in space and not in this kind of sagittal plane. You're having to deal with some cultural brought up stories of like men don't move their hips. And I'm like, well, you can. Guess then you won't have so much back pain.
For sure. I definitely think that people here are more in their bodies. I don't know where that comes from, but it could be I don't know, the way people are used to moving, because men here do move from their pelvis, or
well, the dance culture, right? I mean,
the dance culture, and just in general, we're just very folkloric. People are just really expressive, not only with their faces or with their speech, but they're also really expressive with their bodies. And I think that's also a way the embodiment happens. So that said, it doesn't take away the fact that people do have problems in their body, or they have movement patterns that are not the most adequate. But perhaps people resort to other things in order to keep their bodies healthy. And so having this perspective of structural integration come from North America, they're probably like, oh no, we have our indigenous ways, or we have our Afro-Colombian ways, or we have this pluriethnic background of people who can offer so many different things. And so maybe that's why, to some degree, when you mentioned, when you, or in my case, I mentioned SI, maybe they're not as surprised until they try it. Once they try, they're like, oh wow, like this modality is way different from anything that I've tried. But I think the biggest thing is trying to, from the very get-go, convince people that this work is completely different from anything that they've tried. And in comparison to Brazil, I think culturally, we are different in the sense that we speak different languages, but we are very similar in terms of customs and the way we greet each other and the way people embody themselves. But I don't know, maybe the person that was able to bring SI to Brazil really had the help of other people to really upbring the work and bring it to the level and the strength that it is now. We haven't had that here in Colombia, but I myself, I'm hoping that in near future I can really, I don't know, maybe start a school here, or perhaps bring more trainings here and just bring more awareness to the work. And maybe I could kind of wake up something in the Latin American community, because Colombia is also a big referent for other South American countries. We are looked towards for different things, and perhaps starting a school here can really spike the awareness, or spike the openness of what this work can offer.
Well, we kind of already touched on it earlier in the conversations, but again, what I find so beautiful with the work is that the transformational process, regardless of where we're born or the various stories that we're born into or later become, our bodies are not absent in our experiences. Mm-hmm. And so and talk therapy is great, but then there is something that needs to kind of happen within our bodies to really to embrace the stories, whether they're good stories, bad stories, neutral stories, mm-hmm. but that there is more to our experiences than just cognitively what we're viewing or hearing or interpreting, that our bodies have a part of that. And I think that's what's beautiful about Rolfing and structural integration, is that it brings the wholeness, the whole package into the work. And
evokes a different sense of being. I think that's one of the biggest things about the work. And when you can recognize difference and maybe not necessarily put a label to it in terms of bad or good, I think that's where a lot of the transformation happens.
Couldn't agree more. And we're all victims to modern society. I mean, we're all like kind of collapsing into our devices or our chairs or whatnot. And this work's really great to shake it up.
Yeah. So as I was briefly mentioning, I'm not only here reconnecting with Colombia once again. I've been living here for the past 5 years. So once I finished my training, I moved here and kind of started from zero with one client that exponentially helped me grow my practice. But I'm also here training in hopes of, being my best version athletically, and just being my best version in this work while I'm here. Colombian.
Let's talk a little bit more of so you as an athlete. So we've got a great story of you as your journey as becoming an SI practitioner, but pretty awesome. I can't think of anybody that I know that is striving to the level that you are with your career as a athlete. And is it with hurdles? Is that your
No, I've actually changed events.
Okay.
When did you change events exactly?
I changed events amidst the beginning of the pandemic, especially because I was kind of stuck. I hit a bit of a plateau with the hurdles, and I recognized that I had more of a more talent in the 800 meters. So I've been doing that event for the past 2 years, and it's been quite the success in a very short period of time.
And so with the GoFundMe campaign, which we'll link here, that this is for you to run, like, tell us a little bit about what people are GoFunding.
So I'll answer Nikki first. So definitely the structural integration really helped me rekindle my love for athletics when I was getting ready to quit. And so as I rekindled this love for track and field through SI work, I realized that structural integration was kind of the key for me to stay healthy. Like, of course, I'm not saying that physiotherapists and chiropractors don't have the place, but for me, I was able to come to the conclusion that SI is the thing that keeps me healthy, is the thing that keeps me embodied, and it's the thing that gives me the most awareness, or the most for my buck, in the sense that, like, not only am I staying injury free, but I can really bring a sense of integration, a sense of connection. And that's why from the very beginning, I believed so much in this work that I wanted to do it. And to this day, I'm competing athletically. I've been on several Colombian national teams. Other athletes can have physios, can have other things, but for me, structural integration is the thing that has kept me healthy for the past 6-7 years. I haven't had one single injury in 6-7 years, which people are always like, "Oh, we can't believe that. I just had an injury last year." And statistically, they talk about athletes having an injury at least once a year. And for me to say that I've been injury free for 6 years is quite out of the books. And I definitely attribute this to the work, but also doing my own inner exploration of movement through role playing, or through just discovering different ways of moving in the most efficient way. So that said,
Ally, if you can hear us, we lost you a bit. She's back.
There.
All right. Welcome
You're
back.
I don't know, something happened. Sometimes the internet is not too stable here.
Yes, well, we lost you somewhere in there. Do you want to try to imagine where you were?
Yeah. Talking a little bit about your training, and the question that I was prompted with what we were last talking about was, especially looking at some of the people you've studied with, how do you credit, because you're talking about how you've been training so intensely for 6 years, been relatively pain-free, injury-free. I'm curious, and because I'm kind of I live in Boulder, it's like triathlete mecca here. And, I follow a lot of them. And, while I do think, clearly they're very successful, they're very much, and I have a personal training background. So I understand how you build a program and the kind of the importance of consistency, and how the rigidity is good because it's building strength. But I also hold this question of, when you train and you train with a program and if you're not aware or have invitation for more somatic movement and letting your body fall through. So during the pandemic, I did a whole year training of just playing with somatic movement. It's kind of always been a little bit of passion of mine, but I trained with a woman who also comes from a pretty, well, wouldn't say she's rigid necessarily, but from kind of a very structured personal training background. And we've been playing with these ideas of, while building programs are great, there's also a place for somatic inquiry and really abandoning what the program says and kind of honing into what the body says and exploring. Is that any part of your training?
Yeah, I think that it sparks a lot of profound things in me, especially because I think prior to actually going through my first 10 series, I was a very rigid person, not only in my body, but also in my thought process. And I think the more I have gotten the work, the more I have understood this work, I think there's a place for order, but there's also a place for letting go. And I think for me, it's been a process of letting go, because I think the order, I think, has kind of always been there in my thought process and somehow in my body. But I think for me personally, the most I have gotten out of this work is just releasing and letting go, and also allowing your body to be the teacher. So sometimes you don't need, for example, your training program might say you need to do 10 repetitions of this exercise. And sometimes the body will tell you, you don't need to do 10, you need to do 6. And that's part of releasing this rigid sense that this is the only way you can accomplish, let's say, your goal, right? So yes, in my current training, I have specific times that I have to meet, or I have specific movements that I have to do, but sometimes my body tells me otherwise. First, sometimes my coach will tell me, do this movement in this way, and I will tell him my body will not, like, I have this sense of integration, I have the sense of awareness that my body is telling me that that's not the right way of doing it. And that I think that's part of releasing these conceptions or these notions that there's, in order for you to reach certain goals or certain ways of doing things, you have to do it in a very specific way. And I think that that's one of the biggest teachers about structural duration, is that so many bodies move in so many different ways. There's definitely some sort of a structure behind movement, but I think you can accomplish movement in a fluid and somehow magical, I want to say magical way, taking into consideration each structure. I can't expect you to run the way I run, especially if you have a different body build, or if you have just a different composition. So I think for me, over the years, I've kind of took myself out of this rigidity, and I have gone more into subtleness, more into allowing the body to tell me what it is that it wants me to do. And I think it's yield really good results in terms of also keeping me injury free, allowing me to run my best times, allowing my body to tell me when it's time to rest, or even allowing me to know when to go.
Beautifully said. Yeah, I think that's well, I think we all could use that in our lives, and in whatever doses that's necessary. I think it's love to see a little bit more of that in the traditional sports.
Yeah,
because
and
I feel like
that's also part of my calling into being an athlete, but also being an ambassador of the structural integration community, is that from my scope or from my lens of an athlete, just reforming or some like presenting a different way of doing sport, not only from a place of like being glorious, but also being from a place of enjoyment, a place where you can be at your top level, but without creating damage or hindering your body. Because I think, like I said, your body is your best teacher. And I think over these last 6 years that I've been kind of exploring my body since I got structurally integrated, it's a completely different person in my thought process, but also in the way I move. I don't know that I could do this without this work, or I don't know that I would be in the place that I am if it wasn't for SI. But it's not only from the somatic component, but it's everything that it has brought in, like the different, it's opened up like a container of so many different things that I can pull and that can benefit not only my athletic life, but my entire life in the sense of wellness.
No, because after an athlete is done doing, when they're in their retirement, they still, you hopefully they can, by inviting more, I think more somatic movement or permission to listen and not be held into a program, then you have, I'm not an athlete, but I have observed and worked with quite a few. You want a comfortable home to be in your body after retirement, and not be so banged up by I think basically, I guess I feel like this work gives an invitation to the drive can offer, there's some softness in the drive of the order, and it doesn't need to be, this hard, like, meet this goal, do this performance. And because while that does give results, you're also, the people are in these overuse injury patterns, or they've just like trashed their body in some way or another, where it's unfortunate that then their retirement is dealing with all these aches and pains and, discomfort. And what if that doesn't need to be, and you can still have excellence in performance, was offering a little bit more. And I think that's what's really cool, that what you will have a beautiful platform to promote as you're excelling and going to win the Olympics when you get there.
I'm really looking forward. I don't know how. I think I'm gonna keep going until I feel like it's time to move on, because I do dream about having a full-time practice, or I dream about having time to do other things other than just athletics. But this is where my focus is at right now, and that's why I only do the work part-time. But I'm really looking forward to when the time comes to see where my body's at in relationship to this work. Because I do really think that I could maybe go till I'm on average, let's say athletes go till they're 35 or something. Maybe I can go till 40, because this work allows me to do so. And then post retirement, it's seeing where my body's at. Like, it doesn't have, like, much like you said, it doesn't have to be trashed, or it doesn't have to be like dealing with all these old injuries that like force you to retire rather than you choosing the time to retire. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that transition happens when it happens. And I'm really an advocate of like really telling people, like, look, like, if you, or for example, if you're an athlete now and you get the work, like, this is going to help you keep you healthy. It's going to help you prolong your athletic career. I can't say that it's going to be the same way that I have been managed to do it, like in the sense of not having an injury for 6 years, but it will definitely keep you out of the dumps of like being injured. But like I said, I'm really looking forward to exploring athletics or kind of exploring sport as long as I can, and seeing how my body transitions into retirement once that choice is made. Because I do believe that I'm going to be in a good place.
I'm kind of sensing you might be the Tom Brady of track and field. Never retiring.
Who knows? Like, it could be. And I also have dreams of perhaps becoming a master athlete. Like, I can't say that I have the desire to ever run a marathon, but I do have the desire to perhaps become a like master track athlete. Maybe I'll one day hold the world record for a master distance. But as of right now, my hope is to just be able to make it to like the next Olympics, which will be in 3 years from now, 2020. 2 years from now, 2024 in Paris. So I have 2 years to prepare. By then I'll be 29. I'll be 28, 29. Yeah, I'll be 29 years old. And that's also a good place in terms of peaking for female athletes in track and field. So I'm just kind of looking forward to that.
So the GoFundMe page is to help support the finances to continue training. Can you tell us a little bit more about the GoFundMe page?
So my hopes for this year is to be able to make the World Championships in Oregon, USA. They will be in July of this year. It's a very ambitious goal, but I think it's doable with hard work. And so pretty much the GoFundMe is for supporting a training camp. I haven't defined where, like initially I had thought it was going to be in Europe, but maybe financially it will be easier to hold it down here in South America. But ideally the training camp will be a place where I can kind of be away from the city life. I can kind of focus on training and also have the opportunity to put together all that hard training into a few races that can put me in a good place for competing at the World Championships, or at least making the team. But even if that doesn't unfold the way I want to, there's other opportunities to make other national teams for this year, which is pretty special. Not every year do we have the opportunity to compete in different national teams, but this year is really special in the way that there's a lot of events that are taking place, and I think that's what's important for me right now, to be able to prepare for some of these events. The biggest goal for this year is trying to make that team for the World Champs, but the ultimate goal is to go to the Olympics in Paris in 2024.
All right, well, we'll definitely put a link for GoFundMe so people can go fund you on there. And there's something you said way back at the beginning of the episode was about, you mentioned something about your father earlier on. You said way back when in the early 2000s. And that's when I knew that you were by far the youngest person we've had on our show. Because way back when in the 2000s is not that way back. And so just mentioning how you'll be 30 then. And it's actually really nice because a lot of our guests have been, 40s, 50s plus, a few 30s, but mostly, a little more older in terms of age. And so it's nice to have younger people touting this work as well. So just applaud you.
Oh, thank you. I also do get that a lot, that it's in the SI community, it's kind of a phenomenon to have younger people discover this work and really feel it from a place of like really feel it deep in their core that this is the thing that they're supposed to be doing. And I knew from the very moment that I went through my 10 series that this is the thing that I had to be doing. So going through my training, being the youngest, like everybody there was like 20 years older than me at the time, or even at least 15 years older than me. There's always like this kind of like this shadow of like older people around you. But I think it's also nice to be a little flower, you know, like you don't have to be among trees and bushes. Like you could just be like a little flower growing out of the concrete. And that's how I feel in this field. There's a lot for me to continue growing, a lot to continue maturing. And I really do see myself doing this work for the rest of my life. Even though I'm not fully, like, I haven't fully dived in deep into the work as a result of having the compromise of a sport. That's kind of following me around because, as you know, the window of opportunity for sport is very short, but I can do this work forever. So I feel really grateful to be in this community. I have found support in the different places that I have visited, or the different practitioners that I have met, even though a lot of times they're a lot older than me, but they're quite inspiring, and they're usually people who mentor me and who inspire me to continue doing this work because it is beautiful.
Well, Ally, I was also a little flowering bud when I started out. And it is interesting when this community being still relatively small, but so diverse in age. You know, I started off when I was in my 20s. And oddly enough, my group that I did my training with, we were all pretty young. We we were college graduates, but yeah, kind of coming out of college, being like, this is pretty much our career. But with that being said, you know, that's what's cool about this work is that some people do it very full time, and that they just hold a very full practice, or they're integrating in some way. Like I'm thinking of a friend of mine that I went to school with, and he does this, he and his wife do this, and they also run rivers in the Grand Canyon. And they, you know, and I'm pretty certain the way they talk about how their passengers are riding the boat, they're also probably inviting some somatic structural integration adaptations to take on the river. And I know I've had some side things going on while it's still having a practice. So I just feel we're sharing that to you or to any listeners out there that, you know, I think there's sometimes a pressure in our work to hold these full practices. And that's not always right for a practitioner. Could be doing other things.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I myself, I don't know that I would feel ready to hold a full-time practice in this moment in time, not only because of the other activities that I'm doing, but also because I feel like the other activities are the ones that are helping me build my work. And so if I don't have those activities, for example, if I don't have my athletics, which gives me a sense of understanding of how the body works, then I'm not able to pull in as much information into my SI practice. And my goal here is to be able to give the best offering to my clients or to each person that comes through the door. So maybe in this moment in time, it's okay for me to just have not have a full-time practice, and then just continue learning from other modalities for when the time comes for me to hold a full-time practice. I can be really settled into it.
Yeah. Well, we want to be respectful of your time, and we are so grateful to have you on and learn about your journey. And I can't wait to be your cheerleader.
For sure. Also, I was going to say, I have an Instagram page. I post pictures there, sometimes of athletics, sometimes it's just like my normal life. But I am getting committed to posting more track related pictures. So if anybody also wants to follow through Instagram, they're welcome. And yeah, you can kind of follow my running and my day-to-day life through there.
Yeah.
We'll get those links, and I'll put them into the notes when we post. That'll be a separate email.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's been great getting to talk to you, and thank you for your time and your story. And we look forward to sharing it and being in touch in the future too.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I really did enjoy all your questions and your insights. Really, really glad to have spent this time the way we did.
Great.
We'll see you in Paris in 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to us at Touching into Presence. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. You can find out more about Ally at dynamicposturesi.com, and the GoFundMe link is in our notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you'd leave a positive review of the podcast and subscribe to it through the platform of your choice. When you do this, it really helps other people find us, and we greatly appreciate your support. We look forward to hearing back from you and seeing you on our next conversation at Touching into Presence. Bye-bye.